I'm with James Austin. He was an Olympic competitor in 2012 in Judo, where he competed in the under 100 kilogram category. He is also a judo coach and host of the Original Judo podcast. He's in the process of training to become an accredited sports psychologist in England. And I know you've had many injuries as a competitor, so it's great to have you on the show and great to be able to speak to you. Thanks for joining me, James.
No, thanks for having me on, Les. Thanks for getting in touch. It's a pleasure to be here.
Can you talk a little bit about how you got into judo, which I know in the UK is perhaps not the most popular participation sport. So I'm curious, what started your involvement in judo?
I got started in judo a little bit by accident. When I was like really small, my mum and dad wanted something to give me a bit of discipline, kind of helped toughen me up a little bit, and they thought they'd take me along to the local karate class. Classic to our family, they turned up an hour after it started, just as they were wrapping up the class, and they saw the next group of people come in, and it's a different group of people in a different set of pajamas, and they thought, oh, we'll just give this a go. And 30 years later, I'm gone from beginner to black belt to I'm lucky enough to compete internationally, and now I'm lucky enough to coach at the University of Nottingham. So still in the sport. All parts of me are.
And I'm sure it's physically very demanding sport, and maybe you can talk just a little bit about sort of the aims or the goal of judo. What are you trying to accomplish in a match?
So I know you wrestled, so it's really similar, I guess. You're trying to throw your partner. It's a standing wrestle in a jacket. So I guess if wrestling is like power-based sport, there's a lot of tension and a lot of forearm strength going on. And then on top of that, you can also win like on the ground by pinning or strangling, arm locking your opponent as well. But primarily, the majority of judo is standing up and trying to toss someone over your shoulder.
Right. So you mentioned in your initial response to my question about getting into judo, from going to that first time where your parents dropped you off to 30 years later still being involved in the sport and having competed at the Olympics. I guess, what would you say were some of the keys, I guess, to your success in being able to get to the highest level of the sport?
I mean, I love the sport, and I think for me, really being passionate was like a great motivator. As I was, I guess, a younger athlete and living at home, my brother did the sport as well. So there were other opportunities to practice, I guess, or fight at home. And, and that was like a lot of fun as well, brotherly rivalry. And he's gone on to do his own thing as well, doing some amazing things in MMA. And then I had some great coaches along the way who all kind of came along at the right time for me. And eventually I moved up to a great professional setup, and the support we had from the coaches was amazing. That was up in Scotland. I'm jumping back and forth. My mum and dad have always supported it. And then, more latterly towards the end of my career, I had a very understanding girlfriend, then wife now, who put up with a lot of me being away or being moody or all the things that come with cutting weight or not doing well, and all the being injured and coping with all the stress and strain that comes along with it.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've had a lot of different supports, whether it's coaches or from significant others. Did you get different opportunities or a lot of training and competition opportunities? Because as I mentioned, in the UK, I imagine the sport isn't as popular as soccer or football, as it's called in the UK. Yeah. Yeah. Did you have opportunities to kind of progress and get to different competitions along the way?
Yeah, so the UK has got quite a lively kind of junior circuit and then senior circuit on top of that.
Mhm.
And that was a big part of my development. And I was always on the fringes of the age group national team. As I became a junior athlete, my coach was involved with the national setup, so I got a few opportunities there as well to start going abroad, fighting on the European circuit. And again, like from there for the next few years, I kind of went through university, partly training. There was a full-time centre by us at the time. I was training full-time, trying to do some studies or pretending to do some studies, and it was still on the periphery. It eventually made a move up to like a high performance centre up in Scotland, which was some way away. And things started to come together and made quite a lot of progression. And again, I had a reasonable amount of luck as well, and ended up where I did.
Yeah. Did you know at a certain point you wanted to go to the Olympics and that was your ultimate goal? Or maybe you can talk about how you ended up competing at the Olympics.
So I didn't. Judo's a martial art, and I didn't realize it was an Olympic sport until like I don't know, about 10 years after I've been doing it. But I wanted to be an Olympian since I was like 11 or 12. I really distinctly remember Michael Johnson winning. I mean, this is going back. I don't know how old your listeners are, but the 200, 400 in Atlanta. Was it Atlanta?
Yeah,
96.
I believe so.
And watching his performances was just like, I want to be a part of that. I want to be an Olympian. And so I kind of always had that drive. And then it was a few years later, I realized that judo actually was an Olympic sport. So I did a lot of sports when I was young. And then kind of when I had that realization, was able to start narrow down and start to focus a bit on judo. I think I had a lot of, not a lot, judo's a weight category sport. For a long time, I was at under 81 kilos, which is kind of our middleweight. And I held my weight at that time. So I did all the ridiculous kind of like weight loss techniques that people do. I'm sure your own background in wrestling, you've experienced some of them. Eventually moved up to the next category, which was 90s, and again had about 18 months where I was doing okay there. But it was, again, my weight shot up. I've been holding it down for a long, long time. I was going from like 23, and by the time I was 25, I was 98, 99 kilos. So again, it was a big weight cut, like 9-10% of my body weight. And I had reluctantly pushed into it by my coaches. Wasn't getting selected anymore at 90 kilos. I think had a few bad performances, and people were saying, look, you've got this big weight cut, you should consider moving up. And I did. And at the time, the guy who became my main rival, the person who was very established at that weight, had, like, himself had a lot of significant injuries. So this was at the very start of like the qualification block for London, or the selection block for London. And so he missed out on a huge amount of that because he was returning from injury. And during that period, like I went from, I had a decent run of results, went from strength to strength, and kind of got my nose in front of him. And by the time he returned, he didn't have a huge amount of time on that selection circuit to catch up with me. Again, he was a phenomenal athlete, and I think had he had that time, it might have been a different story. But again, that was where I had my share of the luck.
Right. So what did you have to do to qualify for the Olympics, James? Did you have to I'm guessing there were certain qualifying competitions, or how did that work?
So because it was a home Olympics, we got a little bit more leeway. Normally you have to finish in, it's roughly the top 23, 24 athletes in the world. I think I was 35th or 36th at the time. Because it was a home Olympics, they'd set kind of looser criteria that we had to reach medals at a certain standard. And if we did that, they'd consider taking us. And yeah.
So talk about what it was like competing in the Olympics in your home country in 2012.
Oh, it was unbelievable. It was unreal. And I don't think I appreciated it immediately at the time, because I'd always wanted to be an Olympian. But as soon as I kind of got the selection, I was like, oh my God, I could get an Olympic medal. And so you kind of your goals expand. And I was nervous, like on the morning, and like I loved being around it. It was phenomenal. But on the morning, I was like really nervous and excited, anticipation. And it was one of them. I felt it could have gone one of two ways. Like it could have been a real stress, or it could have been like this really exciting thing. And then I really distinctly remember the announcer announcing my name, and just like they did for all the other British fighters, the crowds and just roared. And there's only, normally at a judo competition, it's parents, a man who's got lost has stumbled in and gone, oh, what's this? And but there was a crowd
like a wrestling competition.
I could quite easily see them being very similar. Someone lost, not really sure where he is, and families and friends. But there were 10,000 people, and the noise they made was just unbelievable. That sticks with me, still gives me shivers. And that made everything like a real kind of boost, a positive, and just knew that everything was going to go really well. And then had a really close match against, to be fair, someone who would have beaten me probably 99 times out of 100. He'd been world champion before. He'd tortured me on training camps like around the world previously. Like he was a phenomenal judo player. But we ended up having this really close match, and it was as the clock ticked down the last couple of seconds, like the realization that was it, that it was over, was like really weird. And then I guess the next couple of days I was a bit like melancholic, a little bit flat, and it took a couple of days to then go and get the realization back of what where I was, and and the opportunity to kind of make the most of it again. Yeah.
So is it the case in judo that after the first loss you're out, or how does that work?
Yeah, so you need to get to the quarterfinal. The person, if you get to the if you're in the quarterfinal, then you get a second shot. You can fight for a bronze medal, like through repechage.
Right.
But if you lose before the quarterfinal, then that's it. So,
yeah. Okay. So, well, I mean, it sounds like you had a tough draw facing a former world champion. I guess. Do you remember what was going through your mind or your mindset before you went out and ran out onto the mat to compete against this world champion?
So again, like just walking out, it was absolutely buzzing because of the energy of the crowd. Like it was unbelievable. And I think I had like a really clear set of goals in mind, what I wanted to do in terms of how to impose myself on the match. And that was kind of going through my head. And I really managed to stick to that. Like I sometimes I got interested in sports psychology because I am someone who has either struggled with nerves or frustration or anger previously, like while I've been competing. But on that occasion, I was really able to focus on what I felt were the things that I should have been doing. I was able to take in the noise of the crowd, but it wasn't like a distraction. I was able to hear my coach, and like in hindsight, it was a really positive experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
But by that time, I decided that I wanted to be Olympic champion.
Right.
um,
Yeah.
that wasn't to be.
Right. It sounds like if nothing else, you were able to implement your strategies on the mat and kind of be true to your game plan. Would that be right?
Yeah, no, I think so. And I think it's one of them who's just a better judo player than me. And I managed to spoil the match. Like, I was never an exciting player. I'm sure in wrestling, do you get it where you get some guys who are big throwers and other people who just spoil their way and look terrible, and you'd never want anyone to see a highlight reel of them.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Some guys are more assertive and trying to take the other person down more, proactive, I guess, and trying to get takedowns. Like there's two styles of wrestling: the freestyle where you
Yeah,
attack the legs, and some guys are very attacking in their approach, and others are much more defensive and sort of a counterattack. So yeah, yeah, for some guys, it's not always scintillating to watch because they're a bit more defensive. But yeah,
yeah. I think that was me. I was a grinder, more of a grind out a result rather than be this explosive finisher. But and it worked to some degree. But he's a phenomenal athlete, and he was better than me.
yeah. So you mentioned injuries, James. One of your fellow British competitors who was vying for the Olympic spot or the spot on the team, and also I know when we were talking before we started the recording, you're mentioning that you've had many injuries yourself. So maybe you can talk about some of the injuries, or even just, I guess, broadly, maybe some forms of challenge or adversity that you've experienced as a judo player.
Um. So I guess the injuries I had largely came um, towards the back end of my career. So I think I was relatively lucky. Had lots of the usual little knocks like small broken bones in hands or sprains and strains. But towards the back end of my career, and the toll on my body started to tell. Tore the cartilage in my left knee. I had a slap tear in my shoulder that required surgery, like a hernia that required surgery. And eventually, so as I was finishing, there's a tournament in the UK called the Commonwealth Games.
Right.
Oh, yeah, you're Canadian, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah,
You,
familiar with
where are
it.
the commies?
Yeah, so it's yeah, the Commonwealth countries participate in the mini Olympics.
Yeah, completely. And it was going to be in Glasgow, which was about 30 miles from where I was living at the time in Scotland. And um, the it was really kind of exciting time to be in Scotland. They were excited to be hosting this event. I had been again selected for the team, for the Scottish team to compete there, which was like a real kind of big thing for me. I'm not Scottish. I've been living there I'm English, but I've been living there for 7 years, and they'd asked if during that time you can change nationality if you've got 5 years under your belt. So it was like a really big thing for them to ask me if I consider that, and I did. And again, I made the team. And then a couple of weeks before the event, I tore my ACL and LCL in my right knee, and I chipped the bone in the femur as well. And this was a couple of weeks before the event was to happen, and it was again, I was told it was quite an extensive injury. I'd injured a lot of the structures around the nerve as well, and it was a bit scary. Yeah, I think at the time I was a bit blind to it. I wanted to carry on, and I tried to train for a couple of weeks until at like much less lower level. I did manage to do a little bit of training before I injured it again. And eventually the coach and the doctor sat down and said, look, if you do injure again, you've got a risk of damaging the nerve in your leg, and that might affect how you walk in the future. And again, at that stage of my career, I had been considering that the Commonwealth Games would be my final event. It was like a bit of an unusual time. So there's a big group of players in Scotland who had all been working towards this same event. And like our generation of players, pretty much, with a couple of exceptions, who've gone on to some phenomenal things at Olympic Games and World Championships, all retired together after that event. So all of a sudden, I was no longer a part of that team. It was a really like unusual experience. Yeah, and like that was a challenge as well. Like knowing that, again, I was 33. Knowing that probably wouldn't be going back to judo in the same capacity I had been before, and that how I decided that I wanted to finish had been kind of taken away from me, which it does all the time with athletes in sport. So I think they're the biggest challenges. Had a couple of losses along the way that like really meant things. So you're talking about other challenges. So the day before Olympic selection, I had my rival in a national or international level tournament that wasn't a selection event, and he beat me, and I was convinced then that was the end of my Olympic dream. So that was challenging for a few days until they made the selections. And I'm sure if I sat down and had to think about it, I'm sure there were a few things along the way that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm just curious, in going back to your description of the significant injury with the ACL, and you said, was it the MCL and some nerve damage before the Commonwealth Games? Would you say that there was some denial of what was going on? It almost sounds like, from your description, you were talking about, well, you tried to keep training for a bit, or.
Yeah. So when I actually injured it, I had an overwhelming sense of dread, which I'm told is kind of what happens quite frequently when you get ACL injury. Big snapping sounds, not much pain, lots of swelling. But again, like I was really focused on this one event and how this was going to be the end of my career. And despite what the doctors and the physio and the coaches were saying, I was very fixated on that this was going to be the end of my career. So yeah, I guess denial would be a good way to describe it.
And then I guess sort of what helped you sort of come to terms or sort of get past the denial, because it sounds like you started training again, but that wasn't going so well, or you can walk us through that a bit more.
So I guess they gave me the benefit of the doubt, or humoured me for a couple of weeks. Like as we got close to the event, they would kind of set parameters around what I had to achieve in terms of training, and then we gradually built up to that. And kind of got close to where they asked me to be, and then like tweaked it again, and it again was really sore, but it was like really, really scary because I think I tweaked my knee, done whatever I'd done to the nerve, and all of a sudden my whole leg was kind of like numb and buzzing. And so there's a big fear factor at the time, and I again really remember that.
What were you afraid of?
So I had this chat about potentially not being able to walk properly and the long-term damage, and that was a significant factor. Again, I was 33. We talked about having family with my wife, and I wanted to be able to like run around and play with any kids that might come along in the future. And I guess so. To be fair, the coaches and the support staff were superb. They got me in for surgery almost immediately, and they said that I could also, like, they got me like front row seats. They got me mat side seats at the event, like, because I said to them that I still wanted to be a part of this team. I in some way, if I could. And they like were really accommodating. They heads, like the performance director at the time, David Somerville, was fantastic and great to speak to. He's really easy to speak to about it, but he also, really helped me feel still, I guess, a part of the team. And similarly, the other coaches involved, Billy Cusack, Ewan Burton, and they would again help me feel a part of the team that was going. And it was obviously it was different, but just being in touch some way was really helpful. Like as the event was going on itself, like I made sure I went and watched. I was there. It was a struggle, like emotional turmoil, whatever you want to say. But again, it was good to see this group of people who are my friends at this event. They all did, almost all of them did amazingly well. For the guy who did least well, I was kind of living with at the time, and he just missed out on a medal, and he was the only Scottish player not to get a medal. So our house for a couple of weeks afterwards was quite a dark place to be. Right. But no, and then it was good. Being around it was good. Being a part of it, I found really helped.
Yeah, so it sounds like that was important, right? To be there, to watch your teammates, even though you couldn't compete. But it also sounds like there were some mixed feelings, certainly, or you said there was emotional turmoil kind of sitting, watching the event. That, of course, it sounds like you wanted to very much compete in as well.
Truth be told, I was devastated, but in a loose way. Like, they really made me feel part of the team, and that I was still loosely a part of it, and it was I appreciated that, and that helped. Like, I think it would have been easy for not the judo guys, but maybe the wider kind of Scottish team to kind of go, no, we've got to put all our resources into this group of people and just forget about me. And I felt certainly that the judo coaches, Davey and Billy, I think had gone out of their way to, just help me keep in touch a little bit. And
then that was helpful, sort of dealing with the injury.
Yeah, that attachment, that's kind of feeling of belonging, was still there. It was good.
Right.
It helped.
Right. And so I guess, in terms of your rehabilitation, it sounds like you would have been coming or rehabbing just to return for daily life after the surgery. Is that correct? Or were you trying to actually come back to the sport?
So I have got a real hatred of being told kind of what to do, and and again, I assume a lot of people are the same, but it didn't set well with me that was how my career was going to end. So I had moved away from Scotland back down to England, down to Birmingham, and I had an effort at coming back. And I received a lot of support from the Scottish team. They sorted me out with doctors and physios down in Birmingham, and went through all the rehab. And again, I kind of had in my head that I would try maybe have a run out ahead of Rio. And I was a long way off by this point. There were a couple of much younger athletes coming through who were absolutely phenomenal, gone on to a lot of success. Mm-hmm. But again, in the back of my head, I was like, no, you've still got it. You can do this again. Oh, it's going to be fine. It's going to be great. Right. And kind of re-injured my knee again. and was kind of forced to accept that I would never be able to kind of do that again. So I still compete. I still occasionally train, but what I find is that like there's some longer lasting effects. So I can do a training session and my knee will balloon, and I'm hobbling for a week, and I can do a competition, and for 2 weeks later, I'm still feeling the effects. I'm sure that's partly age, and I'm sure again, because I know you had a long list of injuries. I'm sure you felt the same. Did you compete after you finished, or?
Well, so yeah, in my case, by the time I tore my anterior cruciate ligament for the third time, it was in a training match against a teammate, and I still have memories of it. He was a guy who was kind of up and coming, but younger than me, and I was doing pretty well in the match. But I'd already partially tore the ligament, I think, in my knee at that point, and then my leg was in this innocuous position, and it just sort of buckled, and then, as you described earlier, swelled. And I knew from previous experience that my ACL was gone, and at this point I had numerous other injuries with the shoulder reconstruction and a hernia, too many injuries. So I kind of had the understanding that that was probably going to be the end. And when I saw the surgeon, who I got to know on a first name basis, he said, "Well, I don't usually tell people to retire, but this might want to consider something more cerebral, like beekeeping or basket weaving or something." So, I kind of, I had so many injuries, I suppose, that it was over the course of my university career that, by that point, I loved wrestling very much, but it also, I was just tired and frustrated of hurting myself all the time and having these 9-month or longer rehabilitations where it just coming back, trying to rush to get ready for a competition and just never being quite physically or mentally prepared to do that. So I think in my case, I kind of knew it was the end, I guess, at that point. But so, I'm curious, James, I suppose with some of your injuries, like it sounds like they happen more towards the latter end of your career, but also you mentioned that it wasn't necessarily the way you wanted to kind of retire, or that it was maybe difficult to come to terms with because that's not how you wanted to sort of finish your career. And so it sounds like you had some efforts afterwards to kind of come back and still continue trying to compete at a high level. Is that right?
Yeah. So that you pretty much encapsulated it there. I did find it difficult to come to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to be able to do it the same again, and that was how my career was going to end. So I feel like I might have felt the same way because I was retiring anyway. Like the whole kind of like change in identity at that stage. But I struggled with the fact that it'd been forced upon me as opposed to it being my choice.
Right.
So like I have since competed again, but only kind of like at a national level, and like I've had some time, and like I compete now because I miss competing. Like I enjoy competition. There's things I don't like about it. I don't like some of the stress or the anxiety that comes with it, but I also like the excitement and the challenge and stuff that comes with it too. So I do still compete very, very occasionally, but just because it gives me that kind of fix that I miss. And I realize that I've never come a million miles. I'm a million miles out of shape, a million miles away from where I was. But I think that helps with like enjoying the competition as well now. And at the time when I was trying to come back, it wasn't about enjoying the sport. It was more about, I've got to do this so that I can finish the way that I want to finish, or if I just get one more in, it'll all be fine. And I was a million miles away, and it was probably never going to happen. And then hurt it again, and
So would you say, though, you've also clearly kept contact with the sport, the fact that you're coaching it, and as you just mentioned, still occasionally competing or still training in some capacity. Was that, I mean, how have you ever really transitioned, in terms of seeing yourself as an athlete or as a judo player? Do you still identify yourself as a judo player, or, because I know for a lot of athletes, when they have a sort of abrupt end, or if, their career is forced to stop because of something like injury, that it can be a difficult adjustment. In your case, so it also sounds like you've really maintained a connection, and I'm wondering if that's been helpful, and if you still see yourself as a judo player, or
That's an interesting question. I think judo is a sport that a lot of people stay involved in like their whole lives. You see that transition from athlete to coach, or people competing like on a national circuit to like the masters, the older age bracket circuit as they go on. I think you see it a lot in judo. I don't think I see. I think I tell people to say retired, so I don't like to say I'm completely retired. There's always one more run in the system, and no, it's difficult. I see myself as judo, maybe not as an athlete anymore. A player, but not an athlete. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's a distinction between being a judo player and an athlete. Like, you can still be a player, but not necessarily be an athlete. Is that right? Or an athlete implies that you're competing and aspiring to some higher level.
Yeah, I think so. And I think you get a lot of people say that in judo, and they'd probably say judoka, which is the Japanese term. But yeah, certainly for a while, I was an athlete competing in judo, and I think I'm much more settled now that I'm still involved in judo,
Right.
but I am no longer that same person, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You talked before a little bit about the stresses of competition, or you alluded to it. I'm wondering for you, what were, or maybe still are, some of the stresses associated with competing itself?
So the weight cut was like a pre-event stress.
How or why?
I think there's a lot kind of around weight, and that is part of the culture of the sport, in that you get used to the idea that this is where you perform your best at, and because of that you wouldn't be able to perform at another weight, so you put pressure on yourself. And I think pressure probably comes from other people as well, to maintain that, I guess, identity in a weight category. I think that's what it is, and that adds a level of anxiety around it, because if you miss your weight and you then either miss an event or you have to move up the weight, where at that point you've kind of convinced yourself you wouldn't be able to compete because you're strong and you're quick in your weight category, but if you had to move up you wouldn't be strong, or and again I guess it's the same in wrestling. And you do all these stupid things to maintain it. In terms of the competition itself, I found seeing the draw, working out who that first fight was, quite stressful.
Why?
I think because of the doubts that come with it, and when I was younger, I think I quite enjoyed that. I got quite fired up by it. As I got a little bit older, that kind of anger maybe came a little bit more anxiety based, maybe, like my emotions shifted a little bit. It became more important to like, so when I was younger, I think I was obviously chasing people and I was trying to establish myself. When I became established and I became either the top 1 or top 2 in the weight division, it went from being that point where I've got a point to prove, it went to being like defending that. And I think that brought stress along with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. Rather than kind of chasing a certain level, once you got to that position, then, trying to maintain it, or I guess fend off, so to
Yeah.
speak, other people who are trying to get into the top spot became challenging, just to, psychologically maintain your position of dominance or strength.
Yeah, and yeah, no, that's completely it. And even now, so I still feel like if I do compete my 1 or 2 events a year, like I feel that kind of stress again. But again, the it's less pressure, and I quite like that feeling again, because I'm now in a situation where it doesn't matter, if that makes sense. Like,
Sure.
my body still reacts with the butterflies in the stomach, or needing the toilet, but in my head I feel a lot more relaxed about it because it hasn't got the same meaning. I'm there to kind of enjoy myself.
Yeah.
Um,
Your perspective is different, or you're not aspiring, from what I gather,
yeah,
to still compete at a higher level, or,
there's always one more run, always one more run.
uh,
um, but
yeah.
yeah, pretty much.
So
Um,
just in terms of the, injuries that you had, you mentioned for you, being connected to the team was important. So I imagine maybe on the reverse, if you felt isolated, or I don't know if you did feel isolated at times during some of your recoveries from your surgery, if that was a challenge, or, maybe you can talk just more about what were some of the mental challenges associated with rehab from some of these injuries? Like the ACL is a long recovery, right? So,
oh yeah.
what was
So
challenging for you, if anything, about that process?
I think the the challenges were more maybe around, like, for my earlier injuries, which came when I was still competing. The challenges were more around, I guess, frustrations and wanting to speed up the process. Um, like, I felt I knew what my body could do, and people were trying to slow me down. But then along with that, what I found is, with, like, certainly with the surgeries and stuff like that, is part of the rehab is you have to learn about what your body can do now. It doesn't quite work in the same way it did before, or certain things, hurt in a different way, or yeah. So
So
the
would
frustrations was you couldn't just jump straight back in.
Yeah, it wasn't going quick enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
completely, and that was the main thing. And again, that you're talking about isolation. I think that's a big thing. Um, I think where we were really good, or certainly were really good with me. Or I put myself in the position where I wasn't that isolated. I still had, like, some real supports around me, and I was still a part of the sport.
yeah,
And I suspect it's a part of everything. Partly was me, like, constantly shoving my face in people's, don't forget about me.
yeah.
and and at other times, like, they were there anyway. They were checking up on me and seeing how I was doing. Like, so they didn't let me get too isolated.
Yeah.
Um,
So the fact, in some ways you were intentional about making sure that, you stayed connected, or as you said, you surrounded yourself with
yeah, I
the
wanted to
right
be
people.
connected. Yeah,
Yeah,
I wanted to be connected. Like, I'd known it was going to be hard, but this group of people were like we were all friends, and the sport was something I've done my whole life. And I think I had the realization early on that just removing myself from that would have made everything a lot more difficult. And I'm not saying it was easy, and I'm not saying it helped with things like frustration, but I'm aware of other athletes who've gone, oh no, I can't have anything to do with it when I'm injured because I get too frustrated or too upset. But then equivalently, they get very isolated because they don't want to do anything with it. And I knew that wasn't good for me. So I think I sort out the contact where I could. And yeah, similarly like that kind of led into where my podcast came from.
Yeah.
I started because, having finished, I wanted to keep chatting to people that I knew in the sport and talking about the sport that I loved.
Yeah.
That kind of obsession, that passion kind of spills over, doesn't it? And if you haven't got that connection, what do you do with it?
Yeah. So would you say, James, if in this case, if staying connected to people, you mentioned it didn't actually reduce or necessarily alleviate your frustrations associated with the recovery, they were still there, but what did it do that was helpful?
It was being part of the community that was helpful. Like, still the social side, like still being part of the social side was a big help.
Yeah. So your sport wasn't just the sport, but the relationships that you had or have with people, and maintaining that was important.
Completely. Like we had a phenomenal group of athletes who were training together, some like absolute monsters. But beyond that, like I think most of us, all of us, like we're really friendly. I think most of us all kind of keep in touch, as you do when you retire. But again, I think the group at the time, or the coaches at the time, were really good at trying to keep you involved, and I think I took my lead from that, and it really helped. And I definitely felt a part of that. And that was kind of what I felt when the event itself was happening, the Commonwealth Games was happening. Like I felt a part of the event, a part of the team.
Yeah. Were there other things, in addition to maybe the coaches making an effort to keep you involved, or the fact that you yourself were intentional about maintaining relationships? Were there other things that were helpful for you, or just broadly speaking, that you, could say to injured athletes, trying to recover and that are struggling? What are some things that might be helpful, I guess, in terms of overcoming some of the psychological challenges of injury?
I think by that time as well, like I had more than just my judo like identity. So I had my wife away from the sport, so I would partner, and we were talking about family. So we were talking about having kids and buying a house and doing all those kind of things. So like I had another role there, and then I'd already decided like what it happened towards the end of my career. So I'd already been thinking about what I wanted to do next. I think if I was giving advice to a younger athlete who had or hadn't been injured, I'd be saying, look, if you do have time off the mat, use it to try and explore your other interests. Use it to kind of like broaden your horizons, and you don't have to follow it up while you're competing. But if you can go, actually, I'm interested in this, this is a part of who I am, or, this is a direction I think I might go into in the future. I think that helps. It helps you move away from being a person with all your eggs invested in one basket. You start to kind of realize that you're more than that.
Yeah.
I think, and I think that helped. Certainly by the time I had my injuries, I was not just a judo player. I was on the road to my kind of psychology masters. I was on the road to or talking about having a family and other bits and pieces.
Right. So the fact that you were at a certain point in your life or stage of your career, you were developing other interests, or other things were sort of coming into your mind and focus. But even for the younger athlete, or maybe someone in the middle of their career, your suggestion is there could be benefit just to developing outside interests or non-sport interests, or sort of developing a sense of self outside of just being an athlete or one sport. I think those are great thoughts and comments. in terms of, I guess, maybe thoughts or emotions that you might have, and I know some of these injuries are a while ago now, but maybe you can talk about whether there were some ups and downs, or, did your, thinking or feelings about your rehab change as you were, moving through the process in some way?
I think so, definitely. I think I went, I don't know, I think I managed to keep like denial going for a long time, as you described it earlier. Or maybe it was something different, but I kind of decided that I was going to come back to the sport and I would be able to finish the way that I wanted to finish, which would be at the level I'd performed at before. And like when
Was that actually
I
helpful in some ways for your rehab? Like the fact that maybe as you're going through the rehab, you still had the idea that you were going to come back. Was that motivationally beneficial or beneficial in some
yeah,
other way?
I kind of see where you go. I think it helped me. It helped motivate me to do the rehab. At this time, though, I was outside of that setup. So whilst I was getting support, I wasn't being monitored in the same way. So I think as well, I kind of gave into some of my frustrations and probably didn't make good choices and went back too soon and then re-injured my knee. And then like when I re-injured my knee, I really struggled. Like literally, something that sticks with me was I had an assignment to finish my masters on the day that I got the results from my new scan, and I went to get the results from the scan beforehand, and they confirmed that I'd re-torn the ACL. And I went to this presentation that I was supposed to give, and I completely messed the presentation up. And I think I was just the poor tutor had this horrible, badly behaved, sulky person. I think I'm quite bubbly, but I think I was really poorly behaved on that occasion.
Yeah.
And it was hard. I was upset. I was angry. I was like, what? Very, very difficult to come to terms with. Like, why had I invested another year of my life, or another, it might have been 18 months trying to get back to where I was, and I was still a distance away at that stage, but like I was upset with myself and the decisions that I'd made to get to that stage. And
So just to clarify, James, you said you came back too early, and so you had done. I'm curious, how long roughly had you been in rehab, and then you said you tore your ACL again. Is that right?
yeah, it was only a partial tear, so I think I was. It had been 18 months because I was, through my first year of my masters, my second masters.
Okay.
But it was 18 months, so I think a lot of the problems I was still having were related to the bone injury that I'd done in my knee, as part of the bigger injury. And I was doing, again, perhaps it was slower recovery because of that. But I was back training.
So was that, you mentioned a minute ago you'd made some poor choices, and I was curious what you were referring to there. Was that in that?
I think with hindsight, I would have gone, do you know what? I was going to retire. The fact after this event, the fact that it hasn't been my choice, is irrelevant. I'm at a point of my career where I should have been retiring anyway. And I think it was my ego and my arrogance that kind of forced me back to a situation where, I ended up injuring my knee again. And I think, that's a big part of it. And people's careers get ended all the time, don't they, because of injuries? Why should I be any different? And again, my ego was saying, no, you're James Austin. Don't they know that?
Yeah.
And it was, I think the second time it was harder to come to terms with than the actual like primary injury itself.
Why?
That took a little bit more time.
Why?
I think it was that acceptance that everything was done, and I don't know if I would have had that had I just retired, but it was going, oh yeah, I can't do this anymore. And I guess that's another, that was the final bit of me going, oh, okay, I need to rethink all of this. I'm not who I was, or I'm not in a position to be who I was, whether that's age, whether that's the injury, or a combination of both. I need to go, what can I do? What do I want to do? And what's actually in my best interests, as opposed to like what my ego's shouting at me.
Yeah. So, having to ask yourself some of those questions was tough.
Or just facing those questions, just realizing that, I should have been asking those questions like 18 months earlier.
Yeah. And the fact that you had spent all that time trying to recover, and then, again, only to have this partial re-tear. Yeah. Sounds like that was tough.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so I was poorly behaved in my immediate reaction, and I'm sure my wife would tell you my behavior for the next. We had a small child then as well. I'm sure the lack of sleep just helped my my attitude like persist a little bit. Like I was angry, I guess, a little bit. Nothing over the top, but it was definitely there. I think having kids really helped, because it helped me go, oh crap, I need to sort my life out a little bit. I need to, just get on with this that's happened. I need to get it together. But yeah, I do very much remember like being angry for a little while, upset for a little while.
Yeah. You said, just the practical realities of having a newborn or a new person in your life help maybe redirect your energy. I guess, were there other things that maybe helped getting over some of that anger, after you'd partially torn it again or hurt yourself after that long rehab?
Like going back to the support I've always had, I think like my wife was very patient. My mom and dad and my brother were great. But I think at that stage it was about me coming to terms with it.
Yeah.
Like I was further down the road towards like where I am now, being a sports psych, which is what I knew what I wanted to do. And I was in a position where I could go, right, I probably need to go, this is what I want to do now. I need to stop playing or pretending to do what I used to do. So I guess if I didn't have that, if I was in a situation where I was still going, what should I do now? It might have been harder to let go of kind of like my identity as a judo player.
Yeah.
Kind of harder to let go of that.
Right. So again, just kind of having some other clear sense of directions you wanted to pursue, what was helpful. It wasn't just like, well, I'm frustrated and I don't have anything else now, and my future is totally open-ended. But the fact that you had some specific paths you wanted to pursue, that was useful in getting over some of the anger or frustration. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. You've hit the nail on the head. So kind of like throughout my whole career, I was conscious that it would only last a certain amount of time. When I was a junior athlete and we visited someone else's club, and there was this really high level player there that I kind of really looked up to. And I can't remember if it was me having a conversation with him or someone else having the conversation with him, and I got it like secondhand. But he was coming to the end of his career, and he was saying, I don't know what I'm going to do next. Like, I've put my life into judo, and I don't know what else I can do. And kind of mulling that over, I was always aware that I didn't want to reach the end of judo and not have anything kind of in the bank to fall back on. And I slowly did stuff through my career, and yeah, by the time I finished, I had a very clear idea of where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And by the time I was injured, and by the time I had my second injury, I was very clear on where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And that I think that direction did help.
Right. I want to just touch on one other point here, James. It's great chatting with you and hearing about your experiences. So you kind of alluded to this already, but again, when you were coming back, and I'll just refer to the ACL injury and the MCL, and that was quite a long recovery. Um, this is just more of a general question. How do athletes know that they're ready to return after injury? I guess, are there signs or indicators that someone's ready? I mean, above and beyond
Ooh.
physical things, right? Like, well, I can do X number of squats or jumps or certain sport specific movements. Are there other signs or indicators that an athlete is ready?
Oh, I've got to say I don't know. So all my previous injuries that happened kind of within my career, the other surgery I had, like I was desperate to get back. I was excited to get back. And I wasn't someone who was like caught up by worrying about whether I'd re-injure it. Like I could forget that I had the injury really easily. And
Yeah. How or why? Because I guess, not I guess, I know for a lot of athletes, that's not the case, that there is, even after, maybe they've done extensive rehabilitation, there is some residual or maybe even significant apprehension about re-injury or, sustaining physical demands. Why not for you?
I've been hit on the head a lot.
You've been hit
uh,
too many times. I shouldn't joke about it.
oh yeah, I know. Sorry, yeah, shouldn't I know? In the current circumstances, you're right. You're quite right. With rugby and boxing and NFL. I genuinely don't know, because I think other people had similar injuries at the same time, and I think, yeah, maybe their returns were different. I do think we got excellent support, and we were part of a system and a setup that, again, frustration might have been the predominant emotion, because they were really careful with our return to sport.
Mm-hmm.
And we were only allowed to return to the full thing when the medical staff like felt we were ready.
Yeah.
The psychological side, I don't know. I can't comment on that, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I think, you kind of imply some important points there, that, it's not maybe just something that happens at the end, but there's a process, and steps that go into it, right? So it's kind of like, if you
Mm.
have a good system in place and you have credible people that you're working with, that it's cumulative, you're building over time rather than just like, okay, today I feel ready.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think I had confidence in the system
Mm-hmm.
that they were. Yeah, so you saying that has made me go, oh, do you know what? They did a lot of and this was the coaching staff and the medical staff did a lot of the, like, I guess, traditional kind of like psych skills, like, so like goal setting, for
Yeah.
example. They would really plan out where you needed to be before you could do the next thing. So it's like those processes and the return to sport it was like laid out, the steps were laid out for you, so you could go, I've hit this one, now I can work towards the next one. Okay.
Right.
So those and all that did was just like help you build this confidence that you were back in shape, or back in the position where you could do it again.
Right.
So yeah, I guess if anything, it would have been those things that the system, my confidence that came from the system and the things that they put in place,
Yeah.
meant that I didn't have to, or didn't have those worries in the back of my mind.
Right. Right. Well, are there any benefits to getting an injury, or for you personally, have there been benefits to some of the significant injuries you've had?
For the earlier ones, and even eventually for my knee injury, I guess it was helping me figure out what I wanted to do kind of next. So the earlier ones, it was always like give me a bit of clarity, like, do I want to go back to judo? You know, I've got 4 months off, I've got 6 months off, and at the time I was really passionate about it. The answer was yes. Could I go back to judo? Yes. Like, if this was more serious, what else would I do? And it was kind of getting clarity around those things helped make it a little bit easier. And then towards the end, the great demise, like that realization that I needed to move on, I think was really helpful, and in its own way probably helped with my retirement from the sport. Like, it was a really clearly delineating, is that a word, delineating? I think I might have made that one up.
No, it's a word.
Oh, it is a word. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It was like it was a defining moment that was like, you can't carry on. I think potentially, had I just retired, there would have been part of me that was like, maybe right. Just, maybe just keep going. And
right. So,
I could have foundered in the shallows, in that kind of gray area, and like loss of like who I was for a little while. Yeah. But it was forced upon me to make a decision.
So in some ways, having something forced upon you, the upside of maybe kind of just making it like a sort of clean decision, as opposed to something that just kind of dragged on little by little, right? Whereas if you're healthy, maybe it could be like, well, I could still get something else out of myself here. I still got it in me, as you alluded to, right? There's always something else down the road that I still might be able to maybe get to Rio, whereas that kind of took it out of the equation because of your significant injury.
Completely.
And it also sounds like, it gave the injuries, different ones, gave you the chance to reflect on whether you did in fact still want to compete, or whether you still have that passion, as you mentioned. And so on that note, would you say that it's important for the athletes to reflect on why they're doing their sport, or whether they want to when they get an injury?
I think so. I think you've got to be able to see the opportunity that potentially comes with an injury. I think it'd be easy to get caught up in particularly if you don't have the support, in woe is me, what am I going to do? Oh God, it's going to be a long road back. But I think, as you asked, there are opportunities there, and understanding like why I'm doing the sport, what I'm getting out of it, was a really big thing. Like, my kind of values around being part of the sport, what it meant to me. Did it still mean the same, or what it looked like now? Was having that option. And again, if I hadn't been injured, you maybe don't get that option.
Yeah, right.
Like, I wonder if a lot of people have had the same thing during coronavirus now, where they've been forced away from the sport. They can go, oh, I've got enough. Do I want to go back? What does it mean to me? Am I missing it, or am I just missing the lifestyle, as opposed to being part of the sport? And there's sometimes different things.
Yeah, so a chance to reflect on one's participation or involvement. Would you say you notice differences in the path that people take once they get injured? Like, some people maybe are more effective at recovering and returning to a high level, others maybe less so. If there are differences, maybe what would you attribute them to? Doesn't have to be.
I mean, I think so. I think I was, again, lucky to be part of this setup that gave us a lot of like structured support and helped make it clear like what the pathway back was. I think, had I been outside that, I think it might have been a lot more difficult, or it might have been a lot more stop-start, and I could see other people potentially becoming frustrated, or becoming disinterested, or re-injuring themselves again. Not being part of a setup, you might again, you find other interests and drift away. Like, and again, I was lucky to be a part of it, and I was lucky at all the support they gave me. And
just my last question for James, if you could share a piece of advice for injured athletes, or just more broadly, someone struggling with some form of adversity like an injury, what thought would you share? Big final question.
So if you can, and I'm sure not everyone can, if you can, I think going back to what you just alluded to, use the time to kind of explore what it is you get out of the sport, and start preparing for when the sport isn't going to be around for you anymore. Certainly as an athlete, I think injury can be a big eye opener into the fact that it could, your athletic career could end, in a snap of your fingers. And if you can see the opportunity in the dark clouds, you can come out of it in a better place, in the long term than when you were, first got injured.
Thanks for sharing your great thoughts and experiences, James. It's wonderful to chat to you.
I think I answered some of your questions and just kept talking and just.
No, it's great having the conversation with you, and as I say, value you sharing your experiences, and just hearing about some of the things, some of the ups and downs that you went through. An up certainly being competing in the Olympics, by the sounds of it, in your own home country. Well done on that. Obviously, quite an accomplishment.
Thank you. Well, thanks for asking me to get involved. So I did check out your website, obviously before coming on, and I can't tell you how excited I got. I saw, because he's had a hernia injury, he's done his ACL, he's had a shoulder injury, shoulder surgery. I was like, oh, it's so exciting. We're like injury twins or something.
Well, definitely we can, commiserate over some of the mutual injuries. Certainly had some shared experience, and I guess, as you say, sometimes these experiences then take you into different paths or lead you down different ways. So thank you again for your time. Great to speak to you.
No, thanks for having me. All the best.